Wayne Spooney here for First to the Floor. It is a Aussie-less late night here. I'm filling in. Jake's
Crazy.
traveling. Ben's got work. So I'm here with Dan Greenberg of Barstool Sports. Greeny, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Booney, it's been a long time. I'm doing
I
all right.
know. Yeah, it's good to see you, buddy. It's been a real long time. Well, we've got a wonderful, amazing game of basketball to talk about. So I feel like I wrote in my notes, this felt like a loss, but also felt like we were never going to lose. Like just sort of a strange game, right?
They've had a lot of these, and I've sort of tried to figure it out because you want to be level-headed and you want to be like, listen, NBA teams go on runs. You hear all the time, no lead is safe. You gotta, give credit, but it does feel like every time they build a 20-point lead, like you can live with a run and the score is between 10 and 14. The issue that I think they've had is they're giving up like two separate runs. The initial run to get it back into, a respectable score, but then they're letting it bleed into where now the score is between 4 and 7, 4 and 6. And you're looking at it like, okay, some of these instances, like you think back to what was the home game that it was Utah, where all of a sudden Sensabaugh is making all these threes. Today, you get the Nets making. How much of them are contested? How much are just black magic voodoo shooting? So I think like as you experience all that, you're feeling like, man, they're not playing all that well. Like I don't know how to feel because I shouldn't be stressed out right now. But then you look at it like, I don't know, if a 29% shooter is going to get hot from three, like, okay, that doesn't mean that the Celtics are playing bad defense if they're just making these low percentage contested shots like they were today in the fourth quarter. So I think you just have to chalk it up to you win ugly. It counts all the same. And it's a mid-March game. Just win it and move on.
I know, man. So I watched this game with my wife, which is like happens twice a year essentially. And I'm like, Cam Johnson hits that like last three to cut it to 1. And I'm like, oh my God. She's like, why do you care? Like, this doesn't matter. And I'm like, I know.
It
I
matters, but it doesn't matter. It's like,
yeah.
You're right, it doesn't matter, but I'm going to be upset if they fucking blow this game.
Yeah.
Even though the Nets play everybody tough, and you know that going in, like, you had enough talent to not make us sweat quite like that at the end.
Yeah, man. I don't know why. I just have watched a shitload of the Nets this year, and for a 22-45 team, they are extraordinarily watchable. They just gave Cleveland a run for their money.
Yep.
Cleveland just beat them by 5. They just got a lot of like dudes who compete and play really hard. I love Keon Johnson. Dayron is a monster. He had 10 offensive rebounds tonight.
Yeah, I think the Celtics only had 12 as a team, and he had 10 by himself.
I know, man. They had 18 offensive boards. Like I will say, like, it's kind of impressive that the Celtics won this game in a way because the turnover battle was basically even 7-9, but we got beat in the offensive rebound battle, and they shot 46 threes to our 38.
Crazy.
And this feels like the type of game that we often lose when we're like losing on the margins, either turnovers or offensive rebounds, and we get outshot from 3. But the Celtics shot 67% from 2, so that helps quite a bit.
Doesn't help my own personal agenda, but you are right. Like, if you are on the road, down 3-4 rotation players, whatever it was, your opponent makes 23s on a high clip, wins the shot margin. I think they took what'd you say, 46 threes.
46.
So you got killed in the shot margin. You gave up 18 offensive rebounds. You got killed in fast break points. Tatum was a minus 16 in his minutes. You add all that up, I would imagine this is like a 1 in 5,000 chance that you win this type of game. Just from the math angle, because think about it, right? Like when the Celtics have a game where they make 23s, kill on the offensive glass, they never lose. So to win a game shorthanded while your opponent is doing that, that's sort of what makes me feel like, okay, it was annoying, but also sneaky kind of a good win because you showed you can adapt and find a way to execute when a team is bombing threes. Like, we need to have reps where you're not really making anything. They aren't missing. You're on the road. You don't have momentum, but you're still executing and finding a way to win. I think there's value in that. And today it was playing through Jrue and KP down the stretch, and it worked.
Yeah, outside of Pritchard, we were 8 for 30 from three. Thank God for Peyton Pritchard. But so I let's start with the big story though, is that KP is back.
Not only back, not dead.
Yeah, not he's alive. Yeah, he doesn't have a new strain of COVID that just got invented, or he may have, but he survived it. How do you think he looked? Because there's one number that kind of worried me about this, and the fact he only had 2 rebounds. But I thought otherwise, man.
I didn't realize it was that few. That's
Dayron, man.
But a lot of those were like of his 7 offensive rebounds. I want to say like 4 of them were just quick. It was like the Queta special, like
his own miss.
Yeah. Overall, though, and watching him play, I think, it was similar to the beginning of the year where I think it took him like 5 or so games to get his 3-point shot, feeling good. He made the big one, which I think, was more important. But watching him play, I sort of have this theory. When you think of normal NBA players who miss big chunks of time, you're like, they need to get back in rhythm or get their touch back or their conditioning back. With Porzingis, I feel like he has so much career experience with missing huge chunks of time that he comes back and is like he never left. Like the rim protection was there, the touch in the paint was there, the free throws were good. Just it was like it reminded me of game 1 of the finals where like, okay, great. Yep. Okay. I know that if Porzingis is on the floor, he's going to give them exactly what he has since the day he got here. The only question that you will forever have with Porzingis is how often you're going to be able to see it. But I don't have any worries about his basketball shape, his rhythm, his touch. Like, again, he just had to have been almost a month since the end of February. Yep. And right away was efficient, was effective. He was 1 of 7 for 3. So that, you think would come around, but the rim protection, the deterrence, like those are all the things that they need around the margins. They had that stat during the broadcast of like they were middle to the end of the league in paint defense in the games without him, and they were best in the league in the games with him. So it was just nice and reassuring that A, he's not dead. Like he can run up and down the court, and B, he really is the type of player that you never have to worry how much time he misses. He's able to just 7-2 is 7-2. Like that's never going to change.
And I think one thing that goes sort of underrated about KP is like his timing of cuts and the way he floats into like these little areas in the mid range and the high post. Like he had one, Tatum hit him with like an overhead, whipped a pass. KP just kind of like floated to the free throw line, caught it, took a dribble, yammed it on somebody. And that's just stuff that like Luke Cornett, who has been amazing, was amazing tonight, cannot make that play. Like he turns that into like a floater or something. So it just gives you he's just so friggin' dynamic, and he's so good with the ball in his hands for being 7'2", that he's, even if the shot's not going down, he's got immense value. And I thought KP defensively, like we had to run a lot of double big tonight because otherwise it was Baylor Shireman time. And I thought Queta and Luke really struggled with the Nets spacing them out. I thought KP was amazing, dude. He was like getting in a stance, like contesting 3-point shots, like taking shots away and getting back to defend the rim. Like, how does this dude just miss a month and all of a sudden he's like our second best player, plus 13, led the team? It's crazy.
And like I personally forgot how much I missed and how much of a safety valve it is for their offense to have Porzingis on the free throw line.
Yep. Like
imagine what that weapon would have done against OKC in that zone that we saw at times, especially if teams in the playoffs are going to make it point of emphasis to trap Tatum and take the ball out of his hands. Just because when Cornette's in there, like you said, like he catches it, the only thing he's going to do is turn and face and pass. Like he is not a threat to score at all. But with Porzingis, he can make the same, weak side passes. He can put the ball on the floor, or he can just take the jumper at a high clip. So it's like you were reminded of Brad Stevens' brain of like, okay, against these tough, physical, high ball pressure teams, we need a guy like Porzingis on the nail to just be that release valve for everybody. And if you're going to run off him, he also has the fake handoff drive, which is another element that no other big man on the roster can do. And it's the cheat code, right? Like that is what we saw today, is all the elements of make him a cheat code in addition to the normal Tatum and Brown attention, white off ball. Like that is what makes them a superpower, is just being able to unleash a two-way 7'3" demon.
Dude, it's so fun to watch. Like how the Nets played defense this game was fucking insane. They were doubling both the Jays like 30 feet from the rim. So it's no surprise we shot 67% from two. But like, again, I love Cornette, but when Tatum or Jaylen gets doubled and they flip it to him at the free throw line, you're absolutely right. All he does is look to pass.
Which is great.
Which is great. Awesome. And he's great at it.
It limits your ceiling on that side.
Yeah, when it's KP, we are fucking unguardable. Right. There's absolutely nothing you can do when that's the dude catching it in that zone, like that high free throw range zone, when you've committed two defenders to one of the Jays, sometimes two defenders to both the Jays. So it was like a layup line at times, and it was really just the Nets 3-point shooting that kept them in it. But I wanted to talk about, I thought Jaylen Brown, his approach to this game, I absolutely loved the way Jaylen was playing until he got hurt. I thought that his defense was amazing. Like I saw multiple times he was calling out a switch to Tatum, who was lagging behind the play defensively. That like never happens. That is always Tatum being like, get the hell out there, Jaylen. And
what was interesting is it felt like he was playing primarily out of the post, like deep coverage. Yeah. Even the very first shot of the game, he first established deep position on the block, ended up getting it into a 10-foot mid-range. And then it was in the early stages of the second quarter, maybe, where he had another deep post, a quick jab step layup. And for him, I think like those are his rhythm shots where he can, use his size, get deep position, get that little 5 to 10 foot, jumper floater going. Then it bled into, he made his top of the arc three. Like, I just think that's how he gets himself going. And I think it's important, especially against super physical defenses. He was pretty adamant after OKC that he didn't feel like he met that level of physicality. It felt tonight like he was imposing and not reactionary, which was good.
Yeah, man, I definitely think imposing is the perfect word for it, because I've been saying like this whole year, I feel like, especially on the defensive end, but offensively too, like the level of intensity of the entire team is dictated by Jaylen Brown. If he doesn't bring it, the whole team is not going to bring it. When he brings it, it lifts everybody else's intensity level. And I thought like once he went out, that is when our intensity level dipped, and that's when the Nets made that crazy run. So I just like, he only took 8 shots. I just thought his approach to this game was absolutely perfect. And when Tatum wasn't out there, the Nets did everything they could to get the ball out of his hands. And he just made the right play every single time. 0 turnovers, which is like kind of a rarity for Jaylen. 2 blocks and a steal too. Like he just seemed really engaged tonight.
And they were 20. They won that first non-Tatum stint 20-5. Like that's what got them that. They were so much better in the non-Tatum minutes. Early, it was, with Jaylen and KP on the floor. Late with Jaylen hurt, it was Jrue and KP to start the fourth. Like those are, when you're not losing the non-Tatum minutes, it's very hard to beat this team once, let alone 4 out of 7 times, because that's really, even if Tatum isn't making all of his jumpers, the gravity and the play creation alone when he's on the floor makes it tough for defenses. So it's kind of like the hoping you do when you play Jokic or SGA. Like you have to win the minutes that they sit. The Nets won the minutes that Tatum played, which was very weird. But, just a lot of that is Jaylen. They have a 126 offensive rating in non-Tatum minutes when Jaylen's on the floor. Like that's an insane piece of it.
Incredible.
And it's even higher, I think, or maybe it's 124 with Tatum off and Jaylen on, and 126 when KP and Tatum are not on. So it's like the Jaylen led non-minutes are successful. I think where they usually get into trouble is the start of the fourth quarters where it's tight and there's, a scoring drought or whatever. But overall in the season, they've been so much better surviving the non-Tatum minutes. And that is what is going to help them, in 2 months.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I will be really interested to see how it translates to the playoffs offensively, because our offense was like 10 or 11 points worse per 100 when Tatum was off the court last year. So that will be huge. I mean, we went 16-3. I'm not really complaining, and Tatum plays like 42 minutes a game, but like a 6-minute stint where you can't score in the playoffs can lose you a playoff game.
I mean, it just lost them the OKC game, right? Like that's a perfect example of, it's one thing to do it against Miami or to do it against Brooklyn. Like, no shit.
Who gives a shit? Yeah.
But if we're curious of what it looks like in the playoffs, I think the OKC game and the Cleveland game are your barometers of like, listen, Tatum didn't play for 6 minutes and they were a -10 in those minutes. So it's like he has to rest. He can't play all 48 minutes in every game in the playoffs against good teams who are going to be up to play you. Like, it's not fair, but that's the reality of the situation of like, teams are so much better now that your margin for error, while it still exists, is smaller than it was this time last year. That's just the reality of it. Like, their point differential this season would have led the NBA last year. That is not the case this time around. And you never can anticipate injuries. So you have to sort of assume everyone's going to be healthy when you play. And I just think surviving when Tatum gets to the bench and Joe feeling comfortable enough to even give him rest. Because I think, as much as we put on his shoulders, I fear for end of game burnout. I fear his efficiency in the fourth quarter kind of struggles at times because he's just asked to do so much and never, ever, ever sits. So the non-Tatum lineups thriving don't just like buy you the benefit in that game. It also allows your best player to recharge for when you need him down the stretch of a close game.
Yeah. And like, if the non-Tatum minutes can, maintain a large lead or build up a big lead, Tatum is a pro at kind of coasting in game too. He's really developed that LeBron tool set of like when to float in game. So he just has to do less if we've got a 20-point lead. Sometimes it snowballs on us like it did tonight. He obviously didn't play the Jazz game, but that looked pretty similar as well. So it's huge. I mean, all signs short of the OKC game though, but like the way Jaylen has been passing the ball, the way he's kind of been orchestrating the offense. He had a really nasty pass, I think, to Queta tonight too, where he like drove it baseline and did like the hoop and laid
so
it
yeah,
for
that
him.
one. And then he had the I think it was the setup to Holiday, who found Cornette for the bounce pass. So like he had the hockey assist. You look at his playmaking jump, it's better than I think any of us could have anticipated 3 years ago. Over 22% assist percentage. He's got like 29 or 30 games with at least 4 or 5 assists, like, which is, more than he had all of last year. I just feel like he's having his own version of the passing leap that we saw with Tatum in the bubble, just in terms of his ability to process defenses. He doesn't need to make the tough read, just make the simple read and keep your head up and your eyes up when you drive, and look at what it's done for him and how much, like, guys now I feel like expect the ball and they're more prepared for when he actually has that dish to Queta, has a handoff to Cornette, because I feel like before they were like, oh, every time you drove into the paint, you always were shooting it. I wasn't ready for it. Now he's throwing lobs. He's throwing bounce passes. You can't say enough about how he's felt more comfortable in that role.
Yeah, man, it's a fundamental element of chemistry. Like, Jaylen has added something to his game that, like, I think it was reasonable to never expect this.
Right.
Like, here's the last 4 years: 3.4 assists, 3.5, 3.5, 3.6, 4.7, like 1.1 assists at age 28 jump. And he's not on the ball anymore either. Like, it's not a volume thing. It is literally just his passes are now more dangerous and passing guys open instead of reacting and be like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. The Miami Heat are surrounding me. Help, someone help. It's like,
more purposeful. It's now
exactly.
He's passing to create for others as opposed to just passing because he got stuck or passing just to, get the ball moving now. And I feel like that's sort of why I never really get upset when there's pushback for him getting initiating rep. Like, these are the things that you always have to remember. Teams are going to make Tatum give up the basketball. So that means all other 4 guys on the court have to feel comfortable in executing offensive possessions when that happens. More often than not, that's going to mean the ball is going to be in Jaylen's hand with the defense in rotation, and it's up to him to know how to make the right play, whether that's scoring or creating for others. So him having those, and I would say the same thing with Holiday. Like, he was more of a facilitator today compared to what we saw against Miami, but that's important because there are going to be times where Tatum or Brown are trapped. He's going to get the ball at the nail and have to make a decision, and I want him to feel confident that he understands where everyone else is going to be. Like, that's how you make deep playoff runs, because then once teams say, oh shit, we can't trap anymore, well, now Jason Tatum has one-on-one coverage, and we all know how that goes. So I think that, like, everything for me always points back to Tatum. Everybody being a threat to create and to shoot off Tatum's gravity makes his life easier, because eventually teams are going to say, all right, we got to change it up. We can't keep letting, Jaylen Brown get hot or Derek White get hot. The second they change their coverage, you're dead, because now Tatum is going to exploit it. But if those guys are turning the ball over, aren't, shooting, they're hesitating with their open looks, if they don't play confident basketball, you're not going to be able to go back to coverages that help Tatum get going. And I just think Jaylen's passing is very high on that list.
Yeah, for sure. It's a, force multiplier when he's on the court with Tatum, and it allows him to keep the offense afloat when Tatum's off the court. So it's been huge. It's been awesome. And I really thought, like, he only had 3 assists. I really don't think that did his passing justice tonight. You're right. Like, he had multiple hockey assists, or like make the first play, then there's 2 passes and somebody else is making a layup. So I'm glad you brought up Jrue. This has to be his highest assist game this year, right?
I think it's his highest assist game as someone. I think maybe it was
that wouldn't shock me.
Somebody tweeted out, it was like, last night was his highest regular season scoring game as a Celtic, and tonight was, maybe it was Grandy. I mean, listen, the 5 of 8 from 3, I think, is a little unrealistic. I mean, he's just he's not having that type of shooting season. But overall, this version of Jrue Holiday that we got in these 2 games, if you're telling me this is what, if we can get 85% of this version in a playoff run, then they're going to be fine. And I'm always weary of his, a right-handed finger injury, but nothing I've really seen is telling me that it's impacting his ability to execute, to make open shots. He's making little floaters and layups around the rim, which is, good to see. And maybe he is just really just saving himself for the postseason. But again, like, the corner threes have to start dropping at a more respectable rate. You would hope that, that's coming, but overall, I just think he's showing you his value, and he's been so good these last 2 games that it makes me a little less worried for the version we'll get in the spring.
Yeah, man, I have been, like, terrified of, like, what if this is just Jrue Holiday now? Like 34%, like, can't really get by anybody. He was awesome tonight. Like, he was just popping up everywhere. He was on the ball a ton. He had 4 offensive rebounds, which is just crazy. 2 blocks, 2 steals, and then the 12 assists. I love when you have double-digit points and assists, and you have more assists than points. That is, like, my favorite stat line. He was on ball quite a bit, but I also thought, like, there's just no guard on the Nets who can, like, handle him. He's just way too big, way too strong. He got to wherever he wanted, and then, like, was just abusing Day'Ron Sharpe, who is hopeless. Like, I love Day'Ron Sharpe, really fun player. He cannot play defense, and I thought
it's a size mismatch for him, but I'm just still the 20. I mean, he's shooting like 27, 24% from the corners. Like, that's too low. Like that, like you say 34% from 3, but from the zones where it's like that really matter for him, it's worse. It's in the 20s. And he shot 60% from the corners last year, which everybody, there's normal regression there. It just can't be in the 20s because, again, I think you're going to see a lot of these dare Jaylen, dare Jrue, like prove that you can make 4 out of 9 threes because we're going to give them to you. And for him, it's the corner. And if he isn't making his corner three, then he has to be a playmaker and a creator like we saw today. So for me, it's like, okay, I'm always going to be wary of the three. But if you're telling me that I'm also going to be able to get the offensive rebound, the defense, and the passing, and then I get to add in Derek White, like you can survive Jrue Holiday shooting at full strength. You can't survive it undermanned. Even if Porzingis is the only guy out, like he can't shoot 20% from the corners. And I just hope that he just needs to get hot because you've been waiting for it all year and it has not shown up.
We've been waiting a very long time, Jrue. Yeah. Anytime now, buddy. And it's like makes no fucking sense that he shoots 50-60% from the corners and now he's in the 20s. Like the truth is somewhere in the middle of both of those numbers.
Right. So. Like, let the truth be 36% and I'll be happy. Fine. Like that's literally like you just need to be a respectable corner shooter so that teams aren't saying, okay, we'll live with it. They should never live with a Celtic getting an open corner three. And I think this year has been if you have to pick your poison, let's just let Jrue Holiday be the one that shoots it. Sort of like what we saw during the Marcus Smart era, where it's like, listen, you got to give up a shot somewhere. Let's just give it up to Smart because, he's going to make it at a 32% clip. And then that's better than Tatum or Brown getting easy looks. So that is going to be his challenge to make teams pay. Like, I just think back to the Memphis game.
That's what I was just going to bring up. Yeah.
I think OKC did that in, the game the other night. Like, good defensive teams are just going to say, go ahead and prove that you can do it not only once, but 4 out of 7 times.
Yeah, and like I do think Jrue Holiday can do it. I think he'll be fine in the playoffs. It is just bizarre that he's so down from the corners this year, but you're right, like 35-36%. If we get that plus the playmaking he's showing, the hustle, and like obviously the defense, we're going to be extremely, extremely hard to beat. And like, we need him against Cleveland too, because like they're going to hide Garland on him. And if he can exploit that matchup, he can basically play Garland off the court. And they're just a less scary offensive team when Garland's not out there. But
yeah. And I think him, outside of, it's probably Derek White, but like he's our best screen navigating defender. So you look at these teams like Cleveland who are going to try to get Garland and Mitchell downhill, SGA downhill. Like you have to have a good screen navigator at the point of attack. And Jrue is by far, White's pretty damn good at it. He usually, maximizes trailing the shot, where I feel like Jrue is better at fighting through and staying in front. Against those teams that are heavy pick and roll teams, you have to have him, healthy, and you have to have him locked in.
Yeah, for sure. And like, it's been tough to watch at times, but if this is like him rounding into form, then they will have played this absolutely perfectly. With
him and Al Horford both have been their management.
Amazing.
Plan. And you know what? Even this Fugazi fake illness to buy Porzingis, like I looked at it almost like at the end of the day, now that we've seen him play, it's like, okay, they're just trying to limit the possible games that he could get hurt in. Like if this was the playoffs, he probably would have played last week. But now it's like, shit, man, let's just get him to April. And if he gets hurt in April, so be it. But he's not going to pull a hamstring, in a random game against the Heat. Like that to me was like, okay, he probably was really sick, but they were also kind of like, if we can trim like 5 or 6 games off of his schedule and know that he's not going to get hurt during those 5 or 6 games, let's just do it. And I would say keep that same mentality, right? Like for everybody, I would like to see Pritchard get a night. I would like to see Tatum get a night. Like you're pretty much locked into the 2 seed. So just start thinking about getting everybody their proper rest and so they're ready to go.
Yeah, shout out Al Horford's big toe. We love that toe.
Thing, medical mystery, that thing.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy how it keeps popping up. Speaking of Pritchard, and he and Cornette really like Pritchard won us this game. I felt
Ooh,
like we were floundering in the fourth
yeah.
quarter, and Pritchard's like, "Let me just bring the wheelbarrow out, put my massive nuts in it, and give me the ball, and I will take this one home." Like, we've talked a lot about Pritchard because he's been so damn good, but like it just like is mind blowing how good he has become. And it's not just the shooting. Like he was getting downhill on people,
Mhm.
putting the shoulder into him. I love the wrong-footed layups he has where he like finishes righty on the left side. And his passing has taken like nobody talks about the passing
No,
leap. There's been a
his
real passing leap.
yeah, his the way he's gone from again, how many times early in his career did we see him have a quick first step, get into the paint, pick up his dribble, spin around, kick it back out like nothing? Now he's learned how to manipulate a defense with his dribble. And once he's done that, he has mastered the quick little easy lob to Cornette. Once the
Yep.
defense, he has the defense shifting in one direction with his dribble. He then counters it with an easy lob. Like that stuff, that's a read that he just was not making early in his career. So now he's found a way to incorporate the Nash dribble. Like he doesn't pick up his dribble, which I think for me is half the battle, because now he's figured out, okay, if I don't pick up my dribble and I just clear it back out, I can still make an impact and manipulate the spacing and the defense to open things up for a lob. Whereas before it was like, I made a move, I got stopped, I panicked, I picked up the ball, and the possession, died. Now I can't remember the last time that happened with Peyton Pritchard. And I just think he's become a more well-rounded point guard. And I think that's his leap this year is you always knew he could shoot. The offensive rebounding, I think, is the other aspect of his game that is just
Two tonight.
mind-numbingly insane. But for me, it's how he's been able to figure out the chemistry and the timing to manipulate defenses on the drive so that he becomes a more dimensional player on the nights where he's not making threes.
Yeah, which are few and far between at this point. I mean, he has his runs here or there where he misses a few, but
yeah, like he had
yeah,
been shooting over the last 4 games. He'd been shooting 26% from 3 heading into tonight. He was tired, in my opinion. Well, egg on my face because he looked fucking fantastic today. And the 3 that he made out of the timeout, I think to push it back up to either 7 or 11. It was like 3 or 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. They had called a timeout, and then he hit like a 30-footer catch and shoot right out of the timeout. Those are the ones where it's like, okay, he's locked in, he's feeling good. I think, he had the one for the record, which was a wide open corner 3. That's the same corner 3 he missed against OKC in the fourth quarter. So it's like you never really have to worry about him or Hauser. Like they'll snap out of their mini funks. And I just think his passing and his offensive rebounding is how he makes the impact until he gets that rhythm going again.
Yeah, man. And, I've never really thought about maybe Pritchard needs a break, but he's playing 28 minutes a night. He's played 67 games.
I mean,
And
you have to he's too important.
yeah,
This version of Peyton Pritchard, I think, is too important. And that he hates sitting out, but like they have to find him a game. Even if it's, the last week of the season. I'm weary. His shooting is so important to their roster construction that you have to be overly cautious, in my opinion.
yeah, and like it's not like Pritchard has like a chill 25 minutes.
No,
Sometimes.
it's
like
hard.
he plays 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
And
like
that's
I
why
thought,
I love him. And but like we're going for back-to-back title here. Like
yeah, man,
you've
big
locked
picture.
up 6th man of the year. You now have the record in threes. You're probably finished with like 260, which is such an insane number off the bench. Like there's nothing that he needs to like boost or gain. Like they just need to be smart for him. Cause I'm the same way I get nervous every time Porzingis jumps. I get nervous every time I see like a quick twitch, like move for Pritchard. I'm like, just don't roll an ankle. Just don't twist the knee. Like just get out of this game clean. Cause you look at him and he's like so exhausted that you're just like, Joe is such a psycho. And I think Joe respects his competitive spirit so much that I don't think he even considers it. So please, somebody like get in Joe's ear and be like, okay, we're playing, the Hornets tonight. Like, let's just get Pritchard, his one night off. Cause again, 67 out of 68 games, is a crazy number. Jason Tatum played 33 straight games before he just sat out against Utah. Like, they're Iron Men, but if you can get Derek White to sit, you can get Peyton Pritchard to sit.
Yes, absolutely. Pritchard's licking his lips when he sees like Charlotte on the schedule. He's like, "That's going to be one of my nights, baby. I'm going to get the rock." But yeah, sit down,
take
buddy.
It easy. Like he's too important. And even if it's being like overly cautious and doom and gloom, like we're at the end of the season. Like now is the time, especially with seeding. You're not going to fall out of the 2 seed. You're not going to catch the 1 seed. So literally, these games do not matter in terms of, pushing a guy or, not even like I was kind of nervous that Porzingis played every second of the fourth quarter today. It's like you kind of needed him, but at the same time, I'm like 30 minutes is a lot for him right away, but they came away unscathed. So that's good.
Yeah, I saw Joe in the post-game interview. It was like, we had him at 32 minutes and he played 31 and a half. Like, I don't see the problem. It's like, all right, Joe, come on, buddy. Let's relax. He's just got back.
Yeah, but I would say like, you could make the argument they needed him. Like it'd be a different thing if it was
they did
a 20-point game the whole way and they're still on the court. It's like those are the times where Joe is just he's a little much in that. But like they also, I feel like, didn't want to drop this game. And when a 2-score game down the stretch, it makes sense that they played. But at the same time, I'm always thinking like every time Porzingis gets pushed on a screen or jumps, I'm just like, I look at him and he's like so crickety and just, it's just very stressful.
I know when he goes to like block a shot in traffic when there's multiple bodies around, I'm just like, no, this
or
is
like
it.
Catch a lob or like dunk in traffic. I'm just like, you're coming out okay, but like my stomach is in my throat and it's just always going to be like that. I think for his entire tenure, it's just the reality. It's the price we pay for having a 7'3" 2-way demon. Like it can't all be roses. You got to have a little bit of stress, to go with it.
Yeah, there's always a catch. Speaking of 7-foot+ demons, Luke Cornett with a little tidy 10, 8, and 1, 2 blocks. I thought Luke. I kind of want to talk about Luke and Queta together. Actually, I think because I thought tonight really highlighted why I think Luke is just a much more valuable basketball player than Queta. Like both of them were asked to play in space and defend the rim and rebound. And Queta did not have a defensive rebound tonight at all.
Kidding.
Yeah, in 13 minutes. And I just thought he looked really lost on the defensive end. I thought he looked fine offensively, 2 or 3 from the line too, which I always appreciate from my deep bench athletic centers. But I just thought he was running around in circles defensively, whereas Luke, very calm, collected. He didn't always get out to the 3-point shooters, but he also didn't close out so hard that he was getting blown by and totally compromised the defense. And just like Luke's rim protection was on point. I thought Queta was like totally out of position all the time tonight. And like, that's the type of stuff I'm afraid I'm not sure if you can totally teach that to somebody. And Luke's always had it. I think you can, but
you don't think that's like rep oriented where like experience and situations, because I'm with you. Like, I didn't think he was all that good in the first half against Miami either. He really just was solid in the fourth quarter to kind of salvage his night. And it is really baffling how you could have 2 7-footers on the court and not get a single defensive rebound. Like, that was just really bad. But I do think there's something with him being a little bit better with quicker players in space. He's just more athletic and more nimble than Cornett. But in terms of the role of the backup center, Cornett's arguably one of the best backup centers in the league because, like you said, he can make, these, contests where he isn't a total liability in space, but, it's not preferred. He's a great short roll passer. His offensive rebound, like Cornett is solid, whereas Queta's more of the roller coaster. And I think that is what you get with a 4th string developmental center. If we're in a playoff situation and KP's healthy, we're not going to see Queta. So like, I don't even really worry about it because I know that Luke Cornett is getting those minutes barring health in a playoff series. I look at Queta being like, he's on a minimum developmental deal. Like, that's a pretty good value for his contract because they don't really have any other big men in the system to develop. So you kind of have to live with his growing pains, but it is such a roller coaster by possession where like there's no consistency in his play. And I feel like that's just the normal young player who doesn't really play. Like the hardest thing to do in the NBA is be consistent. Like there are stretches where he might look incredible, like fourth quarter against Miami. But then you look at again, the very next night tonight, he's virtually unplayable. And that's just such a drastic.
It's crazy.
Thing. It's like you really don't know what you're going to get, and you can't ride KP. So you almost, I was surprised they didn't go small and just play like Walsh at the 5 or something like that, just for energy and effort, because he was just so slow on the defensive glass. It just was not anywhere close to good enough.
Yeah, and I will say this, like Queta has turned himself into an NBA player. Like if his future is not on the Celtics, he will find a spot somewhere. And that is a far cry in a positive way from where he was like last year. And for most, like he was on his way out of the NBA. So the fact he's turned himself into a guy who can have a good fourth quarter against the Miami Heat is like a huge jump. And like he is not a total disaster. He's not a disaster or anything like that. But you're right, like the wild swings, like I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this with a guy. Like he looked totally lost tonight. Like I do think Joe doesn't do him a ton of favors playing him in those Cornet minutes. Like that's just not gonna work. I know we can't, you know, I'm with you. Like play Walshy, see what he's gonna give you. At least you know he can defend in space a little bit. So I just really meant it as more of like Luke Cornet has like the innate basketball IQ that like it just gives his skill set such a like a
boost. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It gives his, but thank you. That's a very simple word that I couldn't find right there for some reason. Like it turns like he's average at a lot of stuff, but because his IQ is so high, it just makes him so much more effective at doing all those things he's average at. Whereas like Queta's sort of the opposite. If he's playing a team where he can't totally understand what they're doing to him, he's just going to look totally lost. But then he has these games where it's like, all right, just switch and roll to the rim. It's like, okay, he looks totally fine.
I think it's more to your point where he can play in double big lineups, but it has to be with a floor spacing big. It has to be with Horford or Porzingis, just for the spacing. And I just think his understanding of how to play in that role. I think when he isn't next to a floor spacing big, things get kind of congested. It's just for whatever reason. I care more about the rebounding. Like. You're 7 feet tall. You should not be giving up these kind of offense. And it was the same against Miami also. And I just think in that role, if you can't rebound and all you do is kind of foul on the other end, to be honest, like you can't play in a playoff series. But again, like what team is sitting there being like, we're giving our fourth center 20 minutes in a playoff series? Like that's not a real thing that happens. It's like, I just can't imagine what would be a comp of that. Like, I don't even know, but it's just like, we're talking about the fourth, very few teams are playing their fourth string center playoff rotation minutes. So it's like, okay, great. Queta may not be ready for that right now in case of an emergency, but guess what? He's signed for he doesn't have to do it in 2025. He has to be able to do it by 2027. Like he's still ahead of the curve on his development until they have to start making, second apron decisions. And we're not quite at that point yet.
Yeah. And like, again, you said it, he's on a minimum deal. Like the fact that he's a live body that won't kill you in games and sometimes is legitimately good. Huge win. We picked him off the trash heap. Like that's a great find.
Exactly. And I would just tell anybody, like, think back to Semi Erden or like, Nenad Kristic or who else? The
Steamsma.
Well, he was Bill Russell, but the dude from Greece or Italy or whatever that came over.
Oh, Datome, Luigi Datome.
Luigi. And then there was a dude. It was like Vital something. I can't remember, but like there have been way worse end of bench centers through the years.
Are you thinking of Vincent Poirier? The French guy, remember him?
No, but he was it. I'm thinking this guy he was Italian, I want to say, or maybe he was Greek. And he came over like early in Brad's. He had like a DUI or something like that after he played for the Celtics. Oh, this is going to bother me. He had a beard, kind of like a scraggly beard. Oh, this is going to bother me. I'm going to think about this and hold on. Google like 2015 Celtic roster, and I bet you.
Okay, I will.
On there.
All right. All right.
But the point is like you can do worse than Neemias Queta, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, and you just rattled off a lot of worse than Neemias Queta. So, I mean, David Lee, that was a pretty rugged.
There it is, Vitor Favaroni. That's what it was.
Favarini, yeah.
Favaroni. That motherfucker. So good on YouTube, not as good in real life. Unbelievable.
Happens a lot. Yeah.
Opposite of Daniel Tice.
Yeah, man, he was terrible. I was hyped for Fabs too, man.
Man, he was so good on YouTube, man. Like, what the hell?
All right, Greedy. I have to get out of here in a couple of minutes, but before we go, I know I haven't been on with you in a long time because you've been primarily doing late night. So if you do not know, I'm very much not a Baylor Shireman guy.
No, okay.
No,
okay.
I think it's tough to watch him play basketball personally. But I will say his defense is better than I expected, but I expected literally nothing. What'd you think of his? He got 10 minutes tonight. Like that's a real roll.
Hit that 1-3. Had
Barely.
one sort of rim out. Hey, it still counts. I look at Shireman, Walsh, and whoever they pick this year, right at the end, if they keep the pick, you just need to hit on one of those guys.
Yep.
For the next wave. If that's Walsh, if that's Baylor, if it's both, it just can't be neither, right? Like they both can't be misses. I'm also trying to give the grace of, I remember how unplayable Jordan Walsh looked as a rookie, yet now in year 2, he shows a little bit more of a consistent view of what could potentially be in the future. My hope is that the same would be true for Shireman. And a lot of that was he has to be the sniper. Well, he started his Celtics career like 1 for 30. Like there's nothing, like he didn't even look close as a shooter.
Yeah.
Now I feel like he's starting to see the ball go in, and at least has the confidence to take them. I think Jake and I we were drunk off whatever. I can't remember if it was the Utah game or whatever. He had like 15 points. I'm like, this is lefty Luka. Like the pace that he plays with, the mid-range jumper, like I'm in. It's not that, but it's enough to where I'm interested in seeing what his year 2 looks like. But I think we'll know by like for now, I feel like Walsh is still kind of a question mark of he still has that high ceiling potential. Shireman in year 2, like I want to see what he looks like in summer league. Like, does he look noticeably better than everybody in summer league in year 2? If not, that concerns me, right? Like we saw Walsh make that leap. We saw Pritchard make that leap. We saw Hauser make that leap. So that'll be his first test because they're going to need a shooting, ball handling, playmaking wing at some point in the near future. And they can't miss, like Brad has to prove that he can draft. Like that is still his one question mark. Walsh, I think you feel okay about that so far. I mean, there are certain guys like, Kamara and Portland that are just, could have been taken, weren't taken, and are thriving. So I can understand, Shireman at times maybe looks slow, unathletic, whatever. But I think if he can be a consistent shooter, I kind of like the pace that he plays in. His defense is better than I think I expected, maybe. I mean, it's such a small sample, but I'm not ready to give up on him. But I could understand a skeptic being like, this guy isn't, he's not going to make the team in 2 years.
Yeah, I do like the pace. I like the feel. I think he's a like sneaky good passer. It just seems like he is not athletically up to the NBA. So green with NB. I don't know if this is Greg or Will, but Baylor or Jordan Walsh as a rotation guy next season. Who you got? I'm taking Jordan Walsh, and
but I don't even think like he won't be in the rotation. I mean, tell me,
probably not
on what their roster looks like. But I mean, I'm not playing him over Hauser. Torrey Craig isn't really, that roster spot isn't really playing. So
Right.
it's like, I don't know who either would get minutes over, but I think I see baby Tatum when I watch Jordan Wall. Like, I just look at his
Yeah,
length.
buddy.
They have the same birthday. They both wear the arm sleeve. They're long. So there's more intrigue in ways that Walsh can help you, especially with his ability to guard up. I think is very important because, again, like, what if they can't bring back Luke Cornett? Like there's a lot of roster decisions that we have to see unfold, but I feel way better about Walsh heading into year 3 as I did going from year 1 to 2, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. And I think the big thing for Walshy to me is like he's 3.5 years younger than Baylor Shireman
Right.
too,
Also
which
important.
is like kind of a big deal. So
Yeah.
that was always my concern with the Shireman pick is like he better show it fast because all of a sudden he's going to be like 27 on his rookie contract. So it's okay to draft older guys, and I think a team like us probably makes sense to draft guys who are more going to be NBA ready quicker. I'm just not sure if it's Baylor yet. I will say the fact that his defense isn't a total abomination is like a very, very good sign because it seems like that won't keep him off the court. And then he's just got to show it on the offensive end.
And I'm curious to see what his body looks like after, a year or two in an NBA. Like, I feel like he already looks a little bit slimmer than his early in the season body. And I just think that will help. If he can trim down, maybe that makes him a little bit quicker. Maybe he can, improve his foot speed, his lateral quickness, because I feel like he has the understanding, but it's now taking his brain and combining it with actual basketball skills to become a playable NBA player. But even if that day comes, we're talking about the 14th or 15th guy on the roster. Like until they're forced to, shed off pieces of salary, they got to trade Hauser or, they got to trade Pritchard, until it becomes time for these young end of bench guys to now move up in the pecking order. Just focus on your development. Like we're still 2 years, I think, away from that happening because again, once they're in the second apron, they can only sign minimum guys. Well, minimum guys are going to be older players. So you need a young developmental wing and a young developmental big to fill in the world after Al Horford and the world after your second apron cuts, which realistically, they're going to have to do at some point.
I know, but the phrase "the world after Al Horford" is the most terrifying phrase I've ever heard in my life. Greeny.
I'm not ready for it. I'm not ready
either.
for it. I'm like tweeting at his family. I'm like, what do you think? Like 2 more years? Like,
Anna, he's good, right?
Conversation. I'll get us in a room together. We'll talk it out. He's just so good and still has so much in the tank. It's like put him on the Udonis Haslem plan and just even when he retires, just keep him on the bench. Like, don't even play him. Just he needs to be a part of the nucleus.
Fuck, damn right. All right, on that's the perfect note to go out on. Greeny, tell the people where they can find you.
Every day, Barstool Sports, Stool Greeny on Twitter. If you haven't muted me by now, I'm sure, plenty have, but just, appreciative of everybody that clicks and interacts and listens to your guys' show, all that good stuff.
All right, thanks, buddy. It was good talking to you, and we are out. Peace.